Say something else real quick so I can hear your audio levels.
Pineapple on pizza is correct.
Perfect. Awesome. Welcome to the Shelf Builders Podcast. I'm Dustin Porta. I'm here with Steve Hugh Westenra, and hello, he's the author of the Wings of Estroth series. Or is it a single book? Before we get to the questions, why don't I have you tell which books you've written and what genre they're in, and anything else that you'd like us to know right off the bat, like your website.
Absolutely. So The Wings of Astaroth is my Spiffbo 9 book. And it is the first in a series. The series is called The Sands of Hazan. So it's just like the first book that's called The Wings of Astaroth. So that one is my Spiffbo 9 book. It's queer political epic fantasy. I've been kind of like, marketing it, I suppose, as sort of a more queer A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones type thing, but set in sort of a classical Mediterranean inspired setting. So it is secondary world, but it's inspired very much by kind of a real history. Um, but it's not exactly a one for one A Song of Ice and Fire thing. It's just sort of an easy way to tell people what the magic level is
And
and
I
that
think
kind
I
of stuff.
saw a horror cover in your back catalog as well.
Yes. So that, I guess, I'm not sure if would you call it a front catalog? It's my upcoming book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, so it hasn't actually released yet. It's releasing October 13th, which I did specifically because it's a Friday. And I was like, that's a
Nice.
great marketing
Nice.
opportunity. Um
Let me stop you talking about your books so I can get you talking about your bookshelf, and then we'll
yes.
circle around back to your writing once we know a little bit about your reading.
Yeah.
So can you just take us on a little tour of your bookshelf and maybe its evolution from, you know, what it used to look like to where it is today? What do you keep around you, book wise, trinket wise?
Yeah. Well, you can probably see very blurrily that there are some trinkets up there for sure, as well as lots of books, obviously. Um, so I guess it depends how far back are we going, like to childhood evolution to adult bookshelf.
I mean, childhood's usually pretty fun, but what jumps to mind? I
um,
got some good answers out of other people asking about
yeah,
childhood bookshelves.
yeah. My first chapter book, like I was quite a late reader, I think, too. Not a late reader generally, but it took me a long time to be able to read longer, like so-called chapter books. My first chapter book was called The Nine Lives of Adventure Cat. I don't remember the author, um, so shout out to that book. I suppose. Um, I was also a really big fan of like the Holiday Inn books. Do you know those? Like spooky.
That was Goosebumps. Goosebumps and
Okay.
Animorphs.
Also, oh my God, Animorphs. Yes.
Late 30s here.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, same. Yeah. Um, I loved Animorphs. And I wanted to read Goosebumps, but I wasn't allowed to. So, um, so there was that. But the Holiday Inn books, you probably would have liked those. I think they were like they were slightly older than Animorphs and Goosebumps, but they basically followed like a detective cat and dog, um, and they were sort of like investigating spooky mysteries, very Halloween themed. And there was like a pet rabbit that may or may not have been a vampire called Banicula, who was part of part of the entourage.
I feel like I remember that.
Yeah, those are good.
So, do you keep a lot of horror around today now? Is that
Yeah,
how
I
you got into
do.
horror?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I said, I wasn't allowed to read Goosebumps. My mom was also nervous about me watching Are You Afraid of the Dark? Uh which is a Canadian horror kids show that used to come out on
I remember
Canadian
that.
television, possibly American too. Yeah.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah. And so like a bunch of kids get around a campfire and tell spooky stories. I was obsessed with it. I utterly loved it. And but I wasn't allowed to watch it, so I used to sneakily watch it. And then kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer came along, and I started off sneakily watching that, but my mom had a crush on Angel, so gradually that was able to to slip in. Um, and it was really like with my friend, whose parents kind of let her watch whatever, like that I started watching more horror stuff. And I do specifically say watching as well, because at this point I wasn't reading a lot, outside of stuff I'd previously read, like the aforementioned Halliday Inn books. But like we had a trio, like three of us friends, and one of them, her parents were the ones who would kind of let us do some stuff, not really bad stuff or anything, but they'd let us go to the video store and rent like 7 horror movies and bring them back. And if the store called a parent to ask if it was okay that we rented them, we'd always give them her parents' number. um, so I just from then on, and my parents
Yeah.
at that point like kind of gave up on trying to limit me from consuming this stuff, or playing horror video games, which was another big
Oh,
influence. Yeah.
hold on a
Everyone.
sec.
No
I've
worries.
got a cat attacking me.
Oh, oh,
What are you
cat
doing?
visitor.
This
Oh,
is Chip. He's kind of it's going to be a problem. I
yeah,
mean, if I'm going to keep recording these and get interrupted constantly,
yeah. I feel
I
you.
could see him. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Here you go.
I wonder, maybe there's a way I can keep this in somehow.
Yeah. I feel like the
I,
cats are definitely an attraction for a lot of
the
potential viewers.
cats are a part of the show, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Maybe
Oh, adorable.
maybe he'll just become a feature. Um.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Move.
uh, talk a little bit about your. Do you have a video collection as well? Like, how do
Yes.
you keep visual media around? Because I feel like it's harder and harder to keep music and movies, especially as time goes on and it all becomes digital.
Yeah, yeah, and we're seeing more and more problematically that as streaming services, get rid of movies or television shows or whatever it is that the content or media type that they're hosting. I hate the term content, so I try to avoid it, but I keep saying it. Um, but the kind of media that they're
Problematic's a
hosting.
good word for it because it is concerning
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that disappears.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The kind of stuff that disappears, and just the sameness. Like I'm noticing I have a few sort of streaming service subscriptions. I think probably not as many as I could have, but I have multiple of them. And there's just so much overlap in terms of the movies that they have and the types of things that they have. And that's become even more so the case. Whereas previously there was a sense that each one was a little bit different, at least. Um, so I very much value physical media for that reason, and I've become even more intense actually about keeping my DVDs and the few VHS tapes that I still have. Just because you never know, like stuff could get taken down. Um, but that physical copy will still remain. Um,
So for the sake
yeah.
of the format, um,
Hmm.
let me rip you back to the bookshelf. Can
Yeah.
you take us on a tour of that? Like maybe starting with your physical media and like describe some of the titles that you have lined up there and
Oh.
specifically what's important to you that you're reading regularly or come back to regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, uh, well, in terms of the physicality of the space, I'm a very cluttered person, but I also have
Yeah, we
OCD.
want to start with the superficial. Give us some
Yeah.
physical description of the space. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty messy. Things as soon as I'm working on like a chapter of my thesis or a like something nonfictiony, there's just books and post-its everywhere. It's terrible. Um, these shelves behind me here, this is the nonfiction room. So this is our office. Where my partner and I are both academics, so that's why we have so much nonfiction. And this is just one set of shelves. We have a lot of books. And most people don't understand what I mean when I say that, but we have a lot of books to the point where movers have complained about the number of books that we have, even though we were paying
That
them
they're
vast
heavy.
quantities of money. um, so, um, so we have a lot of books. The fiction is mainly in the bedroom and the living room. Um, and I'm trying to be better about sort of getting rid of books, like especially if it's something I maybe like but I don't love, and thinking of it instead as like some this might not get read again, but if I donate it to a secondhand store, then somebody else will discover that author, right? So I've been trying to think of it that way, just to psychologically let myself let go of things.
It is something you don't think about a lot as a writer, but as I talk to more game designers, because I'm going to bring some game designers on the show as well,
Oh, nice.
the
Ah.
medium as um, commercialism and consumerism, we don't think about it much. So it's good that you kind of do think about that. Do you have a
Yeah,
process for calling or cycling your collection?
I don't really. I've seen people on YouTube, like booktubers, doing sort of book cullings, or like I think that's generally what they're called, unhauls. That's it. Yeah, doing
Oh,
unhauls. I don't
culling
really.
just sounds so brutal and
It
bloody. I kind of
does.
like that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Apologies to like our first chapter colors on Twitter, but
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, like it's more so that when I read something now for the first time, what I'll do is kind of after I finished reading it, try and mentally assess, like am I going to use this again in my work, because that's also a factor. I've actually kept a lot of books that I didn't personally enjoy because it fits my research, so I'll need to reread it even if I don't like it. um, so there's those books. Or if I determine something isn't useful, or that I can just get it out of the library if it does turn out I need it again, I might donate it. Um,
Do you ever feel like having something like that at hand helps you to sort of mentally access a state of mind or an idea that you had, not just reading, but like just having it?
yeah, like the physical object reminder. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I it tends to happen to me more with smell, and smell obviously is very connected to memory. But with visual stuff, it will sometimes happen too, where if like a book is in constant view, or if something else that's related in some way to what I need to do is there, I'm more likely to like remember to pick it up. Whereas I have terrible there's a term for it. I can't remember what it is. Um, but when something hit object permanence, when
Object permanence.
that might have been what I was thinking of. When like you can't see something, it's moved away. Like it's not the same as object permanence, but like a little like that. And you forget that it's there because you can't see it.
When you walk
So
into a room and you forget why you came in, that kind of
yeah,
thing.
I mean that too. Yeah, I do that a lot. Yeah. So it helps if I can visually see a book I'm currently reading. So if I'm reading a lot of books at once, or my life has been a bit chaotic, then if I can see it, then I'm more likely to remember.
All right. Oh, let me put you on the spot. You know that book smell,
Mm,
the smell of a book?
yes.
What book are you thinking of when I mention that smell? Is there
Uh,
a
that's
chapter or a page?
That's a wonderful question. I love it.
I just
I was actually
came
like,
up with it.
yeah, I was picturing because I do that thing right where you like the first thing you do is like see what the book
Everyone
smells
does
like.
that thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's that slightly gross smell, and you're like, I'll just pretend to not open that one again, but read it, but not. But I love the old musty book smell, which is probably really unhealthy because it's probably like mold and
There's
stuff.
there's a few different kinds of book smells. There's that glossy comic book
Yeah,
smell.
yeah.
There's a
So,
textbook smell.
oh yeah, textbook
Textbook
smell.
have that cover crack you hear when you open it.
When I worked at I worked at a comic store and hobby shop for a few years as a manager, and like we had a customer once who, no joke, brought back his copy of like the Numenera role playing game core rulebook because it didn't crack when he opened it. Like it was shrink wrapped. No one had opened it ever, but it didn't make that cracking sound, and so like he wanted his money back.
It's funny.
So
I thought you were gonna say because it didn't smell right.
yeah, well, that I
That would
wouldn't have
work
been
too.
surprised after that. It's like you see some weird stuff. Um, but to answer your
It didn't
actual
crack.
question, yeah, to answer your actual
We
question,
were stalling to give you time.
yeah, yeah, I'd actually pictured it immediately. Though is the funny thing,
Oh,
partly because it was the book I was planning to talk about, like mentally, after watching the other interview, which is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, the Russian author. And I've got this really nice,
I'm not familiar with the author or the book.
yeah,
Tell us about it.
it. So it's a satire essentially of Soviet life, and it brings in all of these. Like I said, he was a Russian writer, Soviet writer, and it brings in all of this sort of demonology, as well as sort of Russian history, biblical symbolism and narratives, and interweaves them all together. So the basic premise of the book is that the devil has come to Moscow to
I
determine
was
whether
going to ask you to do an impromptu review of a book, so this is good.
yeah, exactly. There we
You
go.
were prepared. So the
I wrote-
devil has come to Moscow.
yeah, so the devil has come to Moscow to see, okay, like I don't know how much you know about the Soviet Union, but ostensibly it's this atheist state, right? So they've done away with God, and along with having done away with God, there's an implication then of having done away with the devil, right? So um, the devil comes to Moscow to see, is this really true? Have human beings really changed? What's the nature of this new society? Has it really sort of escaped the need for figures like himself, right? So while he's sort of in Moscow, he and his troop of demons, who are all very delightful and include a giant talking, walking black cat called Begemot or Behemoth, they kind of like, yeah, they run around Moscow playing tricks on all kinds of government officials and, you know, seeming to cut off people's heads and then replacing them. It's all very kind of wacky and madcap, very sort of theater of the absurd a little bit. If you know the writer, he draws on the Ukrainian writer Nikolai Hoho or Gogol quite a lot as well. Another favorite of
I
mine.
don't, but I'm part Ukrainian, so I probably should.
Oh, he's great, especially if you like folklore and just like weird stories. You might have heard of his one, The Nose, which is about somebody who turns into a nose, or rather, I think it's been a while since I read it. Maybe his
That
nose
sounds very
separated.
familiar.
Yeah, it was turned into an American film as well, so you might be remembering that. But
Oh,
and he was a 19th century writer, unlike Bulgakov, who was 20th century. Um, so he draws a lot on that kind of those sort of vibes, I would say. And along with there's sort of these two other intertwined plots in the novel. Not to go on about it at length, I love it so much. So one of those plots follows a character who's just called the Master, as well as his lover called Margarita. And the master is an author of this sort of failed work of literature, or sort of failed. And his attempts to get it published are really stymied by kind of the Soviet political apparatus, which is also something that Bulgakov himself experienced personally. And so he's really able to kind of write with that authentic frustration with kind of, supposed Soviet superiority at the time, all of these things. And the master is just
what time was it written?
so it was written from, I think, if I remember correctly, the late 20s into the late 30s. Certainly, most of it was written during the
Okay.
30s. Um, and it was banned in the Soviet Union until I want to say 1961 under Khrushchev. And then a sort of edited version was made available. But it was so, you know, so kind of suppressed as a work of literature that the people were memorizing it, and people were memorizing other works of literature too, right? That couldn't that were being censored by the government. So one of my professors in my undergrad actually, I can't remember where it was, but when he was it was in one of the Soviet bloc countries, not Russia. And when he was an undergraduate himself and had been visiting there, he actually sort of smuggled copies of The Master and Margarita into the country. And he was part of this book smuggling ring, I guess, which is kind of awesome. Um,
Actually, I want to hear, before we bring it back around to your books, I want to hear a little more about your bookshelf. Give us
okay.
give us a broader tour just about like the other kind of fiction that's on there and how you organize.
Mine are alphabetized. The nonfiction is alphabetized by subject, although because of the physical restraints of the shelves, there's certain sort of like slipperiness with that in here. So if something's really oversized, which sometimes like nonfiction books, particularly if it's like a book of photography or something, will be really large. Um, but everything is alphabetized. The fiction's all alphabetized. I didn't separate it by genre, mostly because I figure if I want to go read Jeff Vandermeer or something. I want all my Vandermeer to be together. I want to be able to just sort of grab them like this because I do a lot of analysis of his work. So I'll just take if I'm writing a paper, just take all of them and dump them on my desk again like that. That kind of
Is
thing.
there a lot of genre fiction in there compared
Yes.
to non-genre fiction?
Yeah, there's I definitely have an eclectic bookshelf, so I kind of my reading runs the gamut. I get bored if it's all the same. And I tend to be attracted therefore to stuff that tends to like push genre expectations or kind of combine genres in new ways as well. But
That kind of brings us back around to your books. In your fantasy, uh, just by definition, the way you described it sounds like it does push genre expectations.
yeah, I
Do
mean,
you? What about tropes though? Do you find comfort in tropes, or do you toss the tropes out and go without?
I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion around tropes nowadays, but I think it's sort of to some extent the term and the idea is sort of misunderstood and misused. So none of us can avoid tropes. Tropes are almost just things that happen in the novel to some extent, right? So there's always that saying that everything's been done before, right? There's nothing new under the sun, and to some extent that's true. It's all about sort of the permutations, I think, and how we put stuff together. So I don't think it's possible to avoid tropes, and I honestly wouldn't try. I think that would be incredibly stifling. But that said, I really hate the current trend of trope-based marketing. I've tried it because I see the necessity of it in some ways, but I actually like, for
Oh
me,
yeah, we've tried it.
yeah, yeah,
We've
um,
all tried it.
yeah.
For you,
Can I claim this character's a cinnamon roll? Like, um,
yeah, for
yeah,
you it doesn't really work.
no.
Or
Yeah, he's an axe murderer, but like I swear, like if you give him a Christmas sweater, then so um, but yeah, like I really don't like it. I'm not damning anyone who uses it or who does like it. Like I really just want to say that straight up. But I do
I think
find
it's
that
something we all sort of struggle with.
yeah, yeah. I do think for me personally, I find it sort of reductive. I don't and I don't like I'm fine with content warnings and stuff. I just want to say that first before I say what I'm going to say next. I don't like readers being spoiled for the stuff in my books because, like, I like there to be unexpected things. I like there to be twists and turns and that kind of stuff. I perfectly understand that some people like to be spoiled. If you like to be spoiled, I will absolutely tell you what happens. Don't worry. It's your reading experience, not mine, but I don't want to spoil readers preemptively in my own marketing. And to me, a lot of the kind of trope based marketing things you would write do exactly that. Which makes sense in the context of say romance, like category genre romance, where like, you know, it follows a sort of established set of parameters, right? So it's not actually spoiling the book because readers already know that those things are going to happen going in, right? So but for something like what I'm doing, it maybe runs the risk for me of sort of like spoiling things I'd rather see unfold over the reading experience. And that's how I wrote it, is really for it to sort of unfold, I guess, as the book is read.
Should probably I forgot that you brought a stack of Spiffbo authors as
Yeah.
well. You have a bunch of Spiffbo books on your shelf. You want to share some of those and talk about like
All Spiffbo 9 actually, because I'm really new to
all
the indie
nine?
community. Yeah. So I've actually only read the ebooks I have, so I haven't read these yet, but I bought physicals of them in anticipation of really liking them, and I actually prefer
You are
physicals.
so many people's hero right now for having these.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to read them. So one of the ones I was really attracted to was Phil Williams. These are gonna look backwards. I don't know if that changes, but anyway,
It doesn't look backwards to me. Those look great.
Okay, good, good. So Dire Street Punk
That's a great
Witches.
looking cover.
I know, yeah. I think the cover was what first attracted me, and I'd been hearing a lot of really good things about him as a writer. So when I first came into the competition and was following the hashtag and looking at it, he was one of the people were talking about. I was like, oh no, that sounds like my kind of thing. And he seems really nice too. I've interacted with him very briefly a little bit, and he's very nice, so that always helps. I think niceness is important, but anyway. Yeah, really excited for this one. Another one that I was really early attracted to, Lincoln Law's A Crown of Blood, which I think has a lovely cover. I think it got a shout out in the cover contest, maybe. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
so that was another one I
You
really
have
wanted
some that I
to
haven't
read.
even seen because, well, there's 300.
Yeah, exactly. That's the weird thing, actually, is like whenever new cuts happen, like suddenly it's like, and these 10 books are cut, and it's like, I've never seen those before. How is that even possible? Like, so there's always cool new stuff. Yeah. So I've talked to Michael quite a bit. He's really lovely, just really nice person. Michael Roberti, The Traders We Are. This is another one that I think has been quite successful. I've heard lots of fantastic things about it. I probably would be reading it now, except that he suggested I read his friend Andrew Meredith's book first, so I'm reading that. But yeah, so he can blame himself for the fact that I haven't got to his book yet.
I think it's a good sign when someone's plugging other people's books. It means they're comfortable in their own writing
Yeah,
and they're engaging with the genre and the community. It's a good sign. It's
yeah,
a green
absolutely.
flag for sure.
Yes, yeah. I think like I understand absolutely, like sometimes we don't have enough time to kind of be on Twitter constantly or be on Facebook or Discord or whatever it is. And so it can be really hard if you live a very busy life or you have kids or whatever's going on in your life, you might
And we
not be
don't
able.
always have time to read.
Yeah, and you
Uh,
don't have time to read either. So like I definitely feel for people in that situation, and sometimes I think they maybe come across like they're not supportive just because of those facts. So I think it's important to keep that in mind too. But at the same time, I do find myself more and more kind of looking for those people who, like in terms of like online friendships and stuff, who are genuine helpers, and it's not all about sort of like climbing some kind of ladder, which was often, not always, absolutely not always, but often how I felt in kind of trad circles. So it's been a really nice thing
yeah,
about, yeah, about Spiffbo.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Show
So
us a few more. You had
I have
a
a
dozen or so, didn't you?
lot. Yeah, these are, like I said, these are the physical ones. So this one is gorgeous. The Exile of Zanzibar by Daniel Maidman. And it just got announced as the final semi-finalist for Bookborn. So
Really?
definitely, yeah, yeah. Last night, actually, like it got posted at this like quite random time of day or
Nice.
night.
I'll be talking to Daniel later this week, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. So this is
Got a lot
phenomenal. I
more to
wish
talk
I,
about. Excellent.
yeah, I wish I had it bookmarked. Oh, here's one. But he's an artist, so he does these wonderful. He's actually illustrated the book himself, and they're just stunning.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which was kind of the reason I wanted the physical one of that. Um,
Yeah, I think I've seen his author Facebook, and he does a lot of figurative work. It's
yeah,
very polished.
yeah, it's absolutely stunning. I was really impressed. Yeah. So next, J.C. Rycroft, the Bloodborne Dragon. This was another one I was very early on interested in. It's a queer book. I am queer, so always really interested to read more queer fantasy. Again, nice person, and I should say everyone's a nice person. And also, it's on sale right now, so you can grab a copy on sale. Uh, just like being a hilarious salesperson.
No, no, no. This is great.
Okay. I
Well,
feel really
if it's not, hold on. Okay. If if it's not great, we'll cut it. I'll
okay.
cut this part too.
Cool, cool. Yeah. Um so this it's important that this part stay in though, because Jackie has been meaning to go on Dom's channel, and Dom does those little like videos where a bunch of indie authors like talk a little bit about their book.
Yes, yes.
Jackie is too shy and she's tried again and again. So I want this book to stay here. Um, so this is Daughters of Tith, by J. Patricia Anderson, or Jackie, as many of us know her, on the Discord, and I think it's the second longest book in the competition. Mine being the
I love
longest.
that cover art too.
It's gorgeous, and she did this herself also. I just want to point out.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Really beautiful book design. And I one of the things that struck me about this book, I haven't got to it yet, but it is one of those books that's like very different. It's trying to do something unique that we haven't seen from fantasy before. It has a more sort of contemplative kind of pace and approach, and it's more about exploring sort of the world and characters than it is about sort of like constant battle scenes or magic systems. I guess it's there's something a bit fresh and new to it, so I'm really excited to get to that one. Um, yeah.
I think we have similar tastes as well
Nice.
in
That's
what we
always
want out of a fantasy world.
perfect. So last but definitely not least, Matthew Soric, or Sorich. I'm not sure which way he pronounces it. I'm sorry, Matthew. Also, a really kind person. He helped me out a lot when I was trying to figure out what you do when you're doing a cover reveal. So I really appreciate that help. And I've got his book, Bastards of Liberty, here. This is another one that I've seen a lot of hype about online, and I really can't wait to get to. It's just so
I've seen
happened.
some hype about that one, and it's a great cover.
Yeah, really gorgeous cover. The back is nice too. It's got what looks like a cool graveyard in it. So,
Do they
yeah.
look like they're all Amazon printings?
I don't know.
KDP?
I ordered them from my local indie Argo Books in Montreal, but I'm not sure whether they themselves are were they buying them from Amazon or are they getting them from Ingram? I'm not sure. So yeah, some of them are glossy.
I
Some
go
of
through
them.
Amazon as well. I do have a bone to pick with them about cover curl, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I've heard that Ingram
For
are
the time
better.
being, they're the best option
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I actually don't have an Amazon account. I do. My books are available on Amazon, but I publish through direct to digital D2D. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and I really like that because it means I don't have to have an Amazon account. Um, but I had to go begging to people for their books if they were on KU and I wanted to read them. I just send this pathetic message of I really want to read your book. If I send you money on PayPal, will you give me your book? And most of them were just gave me the book for free, which is super nice. Um, and I was happy to pay for the other ones. And but yeah, it's the Amazon thing can be rough.
it's great. Thanks for sharing those. Uh,
Yeah.
but before we go, I really want to know what those action figures are on uh, on the top of your shelf. I can't see them clearly from here, so you'll have to describe them to me.
Yeah, so these are the Dark Horse Game of Thrones figures that came out for the
Nice.
show. And I was sort of collecting them. I still would like to collect them, although it's got harder now. So
Dark
I
Horse Comics does Game of Thrones.
yeah, they do figures, and I
Cool.
think they're, if I remember correctly, they are the publishers also of a lot of the Game of Thrones comics. I know the Dable brothers did the Hedge Knight when that first came out. So this is comic book store, worker stuff coming out, but I'm pretty sure Dark Horse bought them out. So, but anyway, Dark Horse does all of the
Very cool.
figures and merch and statues, um, or most of it anyway. Um, and I've also, you can't see it, but I do have some other figures like Utena, and I brought her down just because she was a horror influence. But this is Heather from Silent Hill,
Oh, that's great.
Silent Hill 3. She's one of my prized possessions. Yeah, yeah. So
Awesome. Steve, well, thank you for sharing with us and letting us take a look at your bookshelf. And thanks for showing all those books.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
no
cool.
problem. Yeah, super excited by all of them myself. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on. I guess I should wrap things up here. Uh, give us your website
Oh yeah.
and anywhere else that we can reach you. And of course, these will all be in the show notes as well. I'm going to have you send them to.
Cool, awesome. So my website's pretty simple. It's stevewestenra.com. So simple as long as you know how to spell Westenra, I guess. Um, and you can
It'll be
find,
in the show notes.
yeah, yeah, you can find information about both of my books there. The Wings of Ashtaroth, and I don't think I ever said what it was called, but my queer horror comedy, which is coming out on October 13th. Is the erstwhile Tyler Kyle, and you can find out more about that on the website too. So I'm also on Blue
October
Sky.
13th, Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so very excited to see what people think, and hopefully some people think some things and there's some readers. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we were workshopping a slogan,
Oh,
uh, and we didn't come up with one, so I'm just gonna say what I said last time: keep your bookshelves dry.
nice. Yeah.